Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast with Mike Tagliere, and I'm Bobby Sylvester. You can follow us on Twitter at Mike Tagliere NFL and at Bobby Fantasy Pro. Tags, what's up, man?
Nothing much, Bobby. It was funny, we were talking before the show with our guest, and Bobby was making fun of us for talking about some golf because it's like one of the last times of the year where we actually have a chance to sit down and watch something like not football related because we're getting to the point where training camps are starting up next week, so we want to get in as much golf as we can before the football season starts up.
I did that too. I went to watch wild animals at the zoo this morning, and I was so thirsty. I got back and drank like 15 gallons of water, so I'm probably going to need to just like go to the bathroom like 80 times during the show. Or just, I should have brought a bucket down or something. I don't know. I don't know what to do, but I drank way too much water before a podcast. We'll see what happens. So we've got a great guest today for today's show, and I'm sure you'll all be pleased to know it's Jim Sannes of numberFire.com. Jim can be found on Twitter at his name, Jim Sannes. That's S-A-N-N-E-S. Jim's always a blast, gives even better fantasy football advice. So we're going to be picking his brain a ton today as we strategize on how to approach the early rounds from all different draft slots. First, though, I figured it was time again to play Does Tags Know Everything?
Oh, no.
Since Tags seems to know everything there is about fantasy football, I want to find out if he also knows everything else in the world, and Jim obviously belongs in this game too. So today we're going to call it Do Tags and Jim Know Everything? Are you guys ready?
Sounds like a lot of pressure.
There's a lot of pressure here. Last time we found out...
Man, I'm sweating now.
Last time we found out Maine was the most forest-covered state, so that's the kind of thing you're going to be dealing with.
Okay.
Today, though, we're going to be talking about the best athletes in the world. When I say best athletes, I mean wild animals. So here it is. 3-part question. Obviously, you have to answer all 3 right to qualify as knowing everything. So lots of pressure, Jim.
Man, I don't know anything about animals. I was hoping we'd stick with like forestry or something. Like I could maybe do that, or like tractors. Totally down, but animals, those are not my wheelhouse.
All right, guys, which is faster, the fastest fish in the world or the fastest invertebrate in the world?
What would be the fastest invertebrate? So
I'm going to go fish.
I'm going to go fish too.
Okay, well, you guys are both already wrong.
Oh, man.
And, the second and third question, I guess you guys don't even qualify for
What is
this.
the fastest invertebrate?
What is the fastest? It's a housefly, believe it or not.
What?
Housefly, yeah.
You've got to be kidding.
I believe they're fast, though, because I can never catch them. I never want to, like, kill them. I just want to catch them.
How fast is a housefly, guys? How fast is a housefly? That's the real question.
Faster than a fish, apparently.
If you guys get this right on the money, you are the kings.
60 miles per hour.
All right, Tags.
I will go with, I mean, if it's obvious it's faster than a fish, I'm going to go with I'm going to say 70 miles an hour, 71, 72.
90 miles per hour. You can't guess every number, Tags. You guys do not know everything. By
I
the way,
I said 70 to 90 miles an hour, so I think
you
I
said
fall
70, 71, 72, you dork.
What if I decide above 60? Can I get a partial credit for that?
Yeah, you definitely both get partial credit.
Sure.
Black marlin, by the way, fastest fish at 80. Both are faster than cheetah, fastest land animal, 75. Humans max is like 26, at least until I do the combine in 2 weeks. All right, guys, so we found out Tags and Jim do not know everything, but fortunately they do about fantasy football, so we're going to jump into the meat of the show here. But first, I want to talk about one of the sponsors of today's show, PristineAuction.com. Pristine Auction has daily auctions with hundreds of items that end nightly. There's something perfect for a fan of every team. Everything's authentic, only from the most trusted sources. Seriously, you guys aren't going to believe just how affordable it is when you go look at Pristine Auction. Just listen to some of the prices on a few items that ended just yesterday. Signed Earl Campbell Longhorns jersey, $60. Signed Tyreek Hill Chiefs jersey, $50. Signed Juju Smith-Schuster black football with the Steelers logo. This thing was beautiful. Just $60. Tags, I saw this unique striped AJ Green signed Bengals helmet. I don't think you have a Bengals helmet. It had your name on it, man. If you're going to get a Bengals one, this is the one to get. The lot ends in like 8 hours, man.
I was looking at it. AJ Green is definitely the Bengal I think that I'm going to go with for my helmet, and I do not. You're correct in that. I don't have a Bengals helmet just yet, so AJ Green seems like the natural one. I mean, what else am I going to do? Boomer Esiason?
No. Joe Mixon, apparently. You love Joe Mixon, so...
No, I will not own a Joe Mixon helmet. I will own him in fantasy football, but I will not. Yeah.
That's a good distinction to make.
Yes.
Yes. You guys are all going to find something you love too. Just check out pristineauction.com. That's PRISTINEAUCTION.com. STINE auction.com. Make sure to let them know Fantasy Pros sent you. That way we can keep doing these giveaways we've been doing. Like right now, we have a signed Keenan Allen powder blue jersey we're giving away this month. If you want to enter it, go check out the details. It's really quick. fantasypros.com/contest.
Guys, real quick, breaking news as we're recording the podcast just popped up. I wanted to let you guys know. Brandon Cooks and the Rams have agreed to a 5-year contract extension.
Oh,
I don't
nice.
know the details of it, but we kind of knew this was coming after the debacle they had with Sammy Watkins and waiting until the deadline there. So Brandon Cooks is going to be with Sean McVay for quite a long time.
I dig that. That's awesome.
Well, that sucks for me because I was getting him for super cheap. Now his ADP is going to rise.
You can still get Robert Woods in the cheap, though, so that's okay.
Yeah, take Robert Woods instead.
I'll take them both.
I like both. I should be upfront about that. I like both.
I like that you like Brandon Cooks. Jim, you're the only person who is, well, I was going to say had the courage to come on, but I really don't think it has anything to do with courage. I just don't think people like Brandon Cooks this year.
Okay, so like if you look at like what I love to look at for wide receivers is how efficient quarterbacks are targeting them compared to their teammates. And every place Brandon Cooks has been, Tom Brady and Drew Brees have been more efficient targeting him than they have been his teammates. And that's true on all passes, but especially deep passes. So like I'm a Jared Goff fan, and I felt really dumb after his rookie year, and he made me feel a lot better last year. So if they can keep Brandon Cooks around, I think that makes Jared Goff a better quarterback. So I am very much entrenched in the Brandon Cooks fan club right now.
I mean, but here's my thing about Goff, and I love Brandon Cooks, but does Jared Goff even throw 480 passes this year?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I actually think he does too, because I don't think he's going to be nearly as efficient as he was last year. But here's the stat I have for you guys. Actually, I wanted to bring this up on the show, and it just naturally Brandon Cooks comes up. Brandon Cooks, as you guys know, he's had over 1,000 yards in every single NFL season, or the last 3 seasons, I should say, minus his rookie year. Do you know the over/under for the bet this year on his 2008 receiving yards? Like, you can actually go online and actually bet this.
His over/under?
Yep.
850.
That's what I was going to say.
775.
Okay, so yeah, bet the over. Duh.
No, that screams bet the under. I mean,
Why?
it's because it's almost like tempting you into a bet. Why would they set it that low on a guy that's had at least 1,000 yards in each of the last 3 years? So my issue here is that, Jim, you went my route, but you went in a different way. Like, Drew Brees and Tom Brady are 2 of the maybe top 5, maybe top 10 quarterbacks of all time. So going to Jared Goff, I would think, would be a natural downgrade. And on top of that, Brandon Cooks now surrounded by some other, guys who were pretty dang good in their roles last year. And it's hard for me to find the targets for Cooks. I think he tops out at like 105, like target wise. And I mean, we saw Tyreek Hill finish, as a top 10 receiver last year on 105 targets, but that efficiency was kind of ridiculous. This defense is better than ever. Like, it's better than the Saints defenses when he was there. They weren't good defenses when they were there. The Patriots last year obviously struggled a ton on defense. So I just think that the Rams, they might take some time to develop, like their defense to mesh well together. But overall, I think the team throws, I still think they're under 520 attempts just because of the way that the team's built on defense, the way that, Todd Gurley runs the ball, the offensive line is intact. I don't think they need to throw a whole lot. So that's my concern about Cooks, though.
So I like Brandon Cooks' a talent, like from a true football perspective.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, he's a talented dude.
But at his ADP, not overly enthused. I don't think it's egregious. But if I'm choosing between Brandon Cooks in the middle of the 5th or Robert Woods at the end of the 8th,
right,
I'm taking Robert Woods every freaking time. And I think that the reason I like Cooks is the impact he makes on Goff more so than I like Cooks himself.
I like that too. Yeah, I like Brandon Cooks an absolute ton in the 5th round. I mean, this is someone who's been a top 10 wide receiver the last 3 years. And I get it, the quarterback's not as good, but are you trying to tell me Robert Woods is as good as Rob Gronkowski, or that, Cooper Kupp is as good as Michael Thomas? This is the lightest wide receiver core he's ever been a part of.
Well, but there's multiple pieces, though, because it was just Gronk, and then it was just Michael Thomas.
No, it wasn't, man. Julian Edelman was a top 24 wide receiver. Chris Hogan's relevant. James White, Deion Lewis.
Well, Edelman wasn't there.
Right, Edelman wasn't there. Edelman didn't play in the year that Cooks was there. So then you go back to New Orleans, and it was just Michael Thomas, and they didn't have Alvin Kamara on the team. So but then you go to this team, and they have Todd Gurley, who's a great pass catcher. People think that Gerald Everett is going to be more involved in the passing game. You have Woods, you have Kupp, who did great last year. So why are we going to limit their roles? So it's just, and again, I'm not saying that he's going to see 70 targets like Sammy Watkins did. I'm not saying that, but I think a realist projection for him would be like 95 targets. That's like realist.
I will get all the shares of Brandon Cooks, and we can talk at the end of the season. Let's just leave it at that. Because we're never going to agree on this, Tags.
Just give me all the Robert Woods. That's still what I want. Just give me every Robert Woods share I can get still.
Dig it.
All right, guys, so here's the plan today. I already alluded to it earlier. What we're going to do is we're just going to go through the first few rounds and give you guys an idea of what it's going to look like if you're at the start of the first round and how your team's going to look through 4 rounds, what you should be targeting in the middle of the first round, or if you have a late first round pick and how you should approach the draft based on that. So obviously we need to start at the top, and really what I want to do here is who are the first 3 picks to you guys, in what order? I've got Gurley, Bell, and then Zeke. I think most people have Gurley, Bell, maybe flipping them, but the 3 spot, there's a lot of differing opinions here. Jim, we'll let you go first. What do you have for the top 3?
For me, it's still Le'Veon first, and the contract situation does make me a tiny bit nervous about that, but I just think that the stability and the targets that he has and my faith in the offense is higher for him than it is for Gurley and the Rams. So that's why I wind up going Le'Veon first, Gurley second, and I think that you could flip those two, and I'm not going to fight you too hard on it, but it is Bell 1 for me, Gurley 2. My third one is David Johnson, and I love basing my analysis around offensive lines, which is why it may be weird to have David Johnson above Ezekiel Elliott. But in the years that Zeke has played, the 2 years, I have not seen enough from him, them utilizing him in the passing game. He was on the field more often in passing situations last year, which I liked, but still didn't get a lot of targets. And for me, if I can get the stability around targets, especially if we're talking half PPR or full PPR, I will take that over an efficient offense. And I think that they are very similar to me. David Johnson and Ezekiel Elliott are, but I will take the targets every time. So David Johnson is my number 3 guy for me, and he is the ending of that top tier for me as well.
Tags, what do you think, man?
So the question is, does David Johnson get the same exact targets that he got before? It's obviously a new coaching staff. It might not be as pass-friendly to the running back position. They added Christian Kirk, who operates over the middle of the field. Ricky Seals-Jones has been talked up a little bit. Larry Fitzgerald is still there. So there's questions there, and they've made an addition there. Whereas with the Cowboys, Ezekiel Elliott, I mean, he's getting targets by necessity now. It would not shock me if he saw 80 targets this year, just because they don't have anybody else to go to. So people were talking about Rico Gathers as a potential breakout candidate. Now the beat writers are saying that he might not even make the roster. So
Blake Jarwin.
The Cowboys don't have a tight end on their roster. Basically, that's going to see more than 30 targets. So then you go to the wide receiver position. We're not starting Michael Gallup right away. We're going to go with Terrence Williams, and we're going to go with Allen Hurns. Good luck with that. Cole Beasley, are you going to target him over 100 times? No, you're not. He's going to cap out at 80 targets. So it's like these targets have to go somewhere. And as you mentioned, the Cowboys offensive line, I came out with an article actually earlier today, check it out on the site, ranking all 32 offensive lines and giving you the fantasy impact. The Cowboys I have at number 2. They even have some depth to their offensive line now. There's 2 guys that would be starting on most teams that are on their bench. So I don't think necessarily they needed it. La'el Collins, they could move him to the bench, but that's here nor there. To me, they're both part of bad offenses. They're both part of teams that I don't think are going anywhere in 2018, but Ezekiel Elliott plays behind the second best offensive line in football, whereas David Johnson, we already saw signs of his decline with that offensive line in 2016, where he wasn't rushing the ball with nearly as much efficiency as people want to think he did. It was a lot of receiving. And again, I don't know if Sam Bradford is going to check down nearly as much. I don't know if Josh Rosen is the type to check down that much. So again, the new offense scares me a little bit. Zeke knows what he's doing there. They're going to involve him by necessity. So I would go Zeke 3. And then the conversation for me actually extends to 4 and 5, where it's Saquon and David Johnson between those two. And that's one where it's like I could understand the parallels to them.
Those are the top 5, and it's not even close in my opinion. I know Antonio Brown is just a freak of nature, but when you can get a running back with 350 touches like Saquon Barkley, and I think David Johnson, if he stays healthy, and it was kind of a freak injury last year. It's not like his wrist was injury prone and is going to remain injury prone or anything like that. It's just a freak injury. So I think if Johnson stays on the field, 350 carries, and you have to say that about any starting running back. It has nothing to do with Johnson. But I think Barkley's kind of the same. So, yeah, I think that's where it ends for me. I think the real first tier is those first 2 picks, Gurley and Bell. I don't think anyone else is even close. In fact, I think Gurley might be in his first tier all by himself. He outscored all the quarterbacks last year, if you guys can believe that.
I'll believe it based on what happened in the playoffs. I'll 100% believe that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm looking at Zeke, though. And I understand David Johnson had the 20 touchdowns and was just amazing the year before. He also wasn't all that efficient. I think that Sam Bradford is a huge step up, so I think they probably throw the ball more. With that said, the game scripts are going to be kind of the opposite because their defense is pretty good. I don't really know what's going to happen with David Johnson, but I'm looking at what Zeke did last year. He averaged 17.7 standard league points. That's more than Le'Veon Bell. So, I mean, if we're talking about number 3, I feel really safe with Zeke. I'm not exactly sure what to expect from David Johnson, and that's the only distinction between the two. I love them both, absolutely, and I like them both more than Saquon, who I love too, but I've got Zeke by David Johnson over Hare.
All right, so let's build on this. Jim, I'm going to ask you, so this is a strategy show. We're going to talk about, if you're drafting from the 1 to 3 spot, we're going to separate it into 4 different areas. You're drafting at the top, towards the middle, but the front, 7 through 9, and then 10 through 12. So let's pretend you take one of those 3 backs. That's what everybody's doing. What is going to be your plan on the way back? Because obviously you're going to have 2 picks that are in close proximity to another. Are you going to aim to gobble up all the running backs? Because you might end up with someone like, maybe Devonta Freeman, maybe Christian McCaffrey falls there. What are you aiming to do, when you get back to that 2-3 turn area?
It largely depends on what's there, but I am okay. Like, let's say Devonta Freeman is there. I'm going to take him because I love the stability in his touches. I like his offense. I love that he plays indoors as well, which is something that I factor in pretty heavily. So if Devonta Freeman slips, I'm going to take him. If not, I've seen Michael Thomas be there. I've seen Keenan Allen be there. Devontae Adams, AJ Green. AJ Green is my wide receiver 5 for this year. If any of those guys are there, I'm taking them over Jerick McKinnon every time. I'm taking them over Christian McCaffrey. So it kind of depends on what's there. But the general strategy for me, I think, will be wide receiver with that second pick because there are running backs available in the 3rd round who I really don't mind at the beginning of the 3rd round. So I think my general thought would be go wide receiver in the 2nd round, probably AJ Green, I think will be the most common guy I get there, and then go wrap back around with a running back with the next pick.
AJ Green's ADP is at 18, and I agree. If he's there, if Devonta Freeman is there, ADP 20, we're talking about pick 24 here. You pull the trigger. Those guys are gimmies there. Keenan Allen sometimes could fall, like you said, Michael Thomas. I would even, if none of those guys are there, Christian McCaffrey, great. Devontae Adams, obviously love him. After that, though, after those 20 guys, it gets ugly in a hurry. And I love picking 1, 2 usually, but this year, I don't know where to go. Tags, where are you going here, man?
Yeah, so it's pretty tough. And as Jim said, I'm not it sounds like Jim is pretty much like I am, where we don't walk in with one particular strategy. You kind of take the draft as it plays out. But, I've done enough drafts this year, mock drafts, best ball drafts, whatever, to know kind of who's going to be there at that point. And the toughest decision I have, I usually want to grab at least one wide receiver with one of those next 2 picks. And the reason I say that, you have your stud running back. You want to get as many elite players on your team as possible. And if you're going running back, you're probably grabbing someone who's not elite. It's almost like someone that it might be like a Jordan Howard or a Jerick McKinnon, where it's like these guys are expected to do well in 2018, but they're not studs. They're not the elite of the elite. If you can get AJ Green or Mike Evans there, I would probably go that route. I usually want to end up with at least one wide receiver through the first 3 rounds, no matter where I'm picking, because if you pass on wide receiver here, you're going to end up with a starter like, maybe Demaryius Thomas or Juju Smith-Schuster as your wide receiver 1, and nobody wants to do that. But my question to you guys, let's pretend that we go and we grab AJ Green there, or, maybe Devontae Adams falls to us. We grab one of those.
You guys are being too optimistic. It's not going to happen that often.
It has happened.
It has.
It has. It's happened. Yeah, it has happened for sure. I'm just saying you can't rely on that, Tags.
Yeah, but no, running backs are the thing to do this year. Believe me, like everyone wants running backs.
I'm looking at the ADP numbers, and drafting AJ Green 18 is the thing to do.
He's going at 21 on Fantasy Football Calculator. So it's like towards that. So we're talking about the 1 through 3 spot. So it's the 22 through 24 spot. So he can be there. Devontae Adams is going as low as 22 on NFL.com. So it's like these are guys that are varying right around that area. Mike Evans is 24 on a couple sites. So let's just pretend that we get one of those wide receivers, right? We're happy. We get one of those wide receivers. And then it comes in the 3rd, and you're staring at someone like Jerick McKinnon and Rob Gronkowski and Travis Kelce. What one of those 3 would you do now that you have one running back and one wide receiver on your team?
For me, I'm going McKinnon because if you look at the fall off at running back, like let's say I pass on McKinnon here, and we go around to the fourth round, which would be towards the end of the fourth round. The running backs available there, I know you guys have probably differing thoughts here, but like my level of stability in Kenyon Drake, Sony Michel, Mark Ingram, Jay Ajayi could be there too.
Alex Collins, yeah, yuck.
My level of confidence in those running backs is very low. So I think in general, I would prefer to go with the running back there. But if McKinnon's gone and, like Joe Mixon is gone too, then I'm probably just going back to the wide receivers rather than going with the tight ends, because the fall off at both these positions, both running back and wide receiver, is frightening to me. So I want to get as many of those as quickly as I can. And I'm okay with taking Gronk where he is. I'm okay with Kelsey where he is. But when the alternative is cramming in another running back or a wide receiver before that cliff happens, I'm going to do that whenever I can, basically.
I actually think I like Zach Ertz as much or more as Gronk and Kelsey. I mean, Gronk has the injury-prone stuff. That could just absolutely kill your season. I understand Ertz could get injured too, but we've seen Gronk do it several times and just kill your season. And I don't think Gronk is in his own tier anymore. Like, if he's healthy, yeah, he's probably going to be the tight end one, but it wouldn't surprise anyone if Ertz was. I mean, 3 consecutive seasons, he's got more receptions than Rob Gronkowski. Trey Burton's gone now. You get a full season of Carson Wentz probably. I think Ertz is right up there. And granted, his ADP is 32, so I'm not taking him at the turn. But because I think Ertz is the tight end 1 or 2, I can't really see taking Gronk that high.
But that's the thing is then, so you pass and you're saying I'm not getting any of these guys because they're not going to be there at the next turn. Like, we know that. So then that's where the issue comes in, right? So have we come to a consensus here where it's like we're going to take a running back in the first, in the second round we're likely going to end up with a wide receiver if all goes as planned to ADP.
I disagree.
And then if there's a top 15 running back, we'll go that route in round 3. And if there's not a top 15 running back, we'll go back to the wide receiver position, look for someone like Doug Baldwin.
No, I disagree with you guys. And I think both of you had said that clearly. And that could very well be the case. Like, yeah, if AJ Green's there, I'm taking him. If AJ Green and Mike Evans are there, sure, I'll take them both. I don't even need Jerick McKinnon. But I don't really know if that's going to happen. For me, it's just who's the best player available in the first 3 rounds. No matter what, you adjust your strategy from there. If it's 3 running backs, do it. If it's 2 wide receivers and a tight end, do it. Just take the best players available. The difference between players in this range is so much higher than it is later. You can just stack up on depth, high upside pieces. I mean, if you get 3 running backs here, which is something that as I've been doing mock drafts early in the draft, if I get an early first round pick, sometimes I get 3 running backs. I'm sorry. I get Todd Gurley, I get Christian McCaffrey, and I get Jerick McKinnon. If that happens, I'm okay with that because you know what that means? I get 6, 7 wide receivers, all high upside. I'm going to hit some lottery tickets. I'll have 3 good ones.
But it was the same argument, though, in terms of having like that 5th or 6th pick and choosing between Antonio Brown and someone like Saquon Barkley. We know Antonio Brown's a better player. The thing is, Antonio Brown's a proven stud. You could argue him up there with the number 3, like the top 3 running backs. But it all comes down for me, and I think Jim too, is position scarcity. And I think he hit the nail on the head, and he said that there's 15 running backs, and that's the exact number I have. Now that LaShawn McCoy is pretty much on my do not draft list, there is exactly 15 running backs that I'm okay with having as a potential RB1. If I can get 2 of those guys, it's like a no-brainer because it's going to put you ahead of the game. Whereas Demaryius Thomas, the drop-off between him and someone like, if you're taking, like looking at the ADP, it's someone like Tyreek Hill or Adam Thielen. I don't think it's that big of a drop-off to Demaryius Thomas, where it's like going from someone like a Jordan Howard, a Joe Mixon, and Jerick McKinnon down to someone like maybe like an Alex Collins. I think that's a bigger drop-off.
Huge drop-off, yeah. And I agree. I think Antonio Brown is the better player than these guys, but those top 5 running backs, what I was talking about there is you're going to get 350 touches from those guys. No one else is even going to sniff that number. Unless Dalvin Cook is actually healthy, then I think he's got a chance to do it. Leonard Fournette, again, I don't imagine he's going to be healthy. He's just never healthy. So he's got a chance to do it as well. Besides that, it's just those 5 running backs. So you get those running backs early, but Antonio Brown is behind them as a result of that. Now, in terms of guys at the turn here, I'm not saying that that Jerick McKinnon is better than Mike Evans or anything like that. I'm saying in terms of value-based drafting, yeah, he is better because you've got to get 2 of those top 18 running backs or you're virtually screwed. So let me ask you guys this question, okay? Let me give you this scenario because I'm looking at the ADP here, right? Let's say you picked 1, you got Todd Gurley, Jim, you got Le'Veon Bell, okay? So you're sitting at 24. Mike Evans is gone. A.J. Green's gone. Devontae Adams, Christian McCaffrey, Devontae Freeman. So your best players available right here. Rob Gronkowski, Jordan Howard, according to ADP, Joe Mixon, LaShawn McCoy, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. Someone is going to be in that situation. Where do you go? Do you reach all the way down for Doug Baldwin, whose ADP is 33? I think that's where I would go.
Yeah, Doug Baldwin would be my pretty easy choice there, honestly. Okay. It would be, if I'm picking two, it'd probably be Mixon and Doug Baldwin. Doug Baldwin's my wide receiver 9 for this year, right behind Devontae Adams. I don't consider it a quote-unquote reach at the turn because there is no chance Doug Baldwin comes back to me. So I'm okay with a quote-unquote reach if he is my next ranked guy. There's a lot more strategy if I'm drafting in the middle of the second and I can get Doug Baldwin the next time around. But there, at the turn, I'm not going to get him no matter what if I don't draft him there. So there I'd go Mixon, Baldwin. They'd be my highest ranked wide receiver and running back. Then I get 2 of my top 14 running backs in Mixon and Bell, and I get a top 10 wide receiver, at least in my eyes, in Doug Baldwin. And then, like Tags was saying, I still have a lot of chances to get decent wide receivers at the next 2 picks in the 4th and 5th round. So give me Mixon, give me Baldwin there, and I'm feeling pretty good about those 2 guys personally.
Mm-hmm.
I've got Baldwin wide receiver 9 as well, ahead of Mike Evans. I've actually got Evans number 11. I mean, what did he finish last year? Wide receiver 22, 23? So, yeah, the touchdowns might go up. Jameis Winston's out the first 3 games, whatever.
It's a quarterback upgrade for him.
But, yeah, I got Doug Baldwin higher. That's who I would take at the turn. Tags, is that who you're taking, too, if all those guys are gone?
Yeah, that sounded like a great turn to me. And like you said,
Baldwin and Mixon?
Yeah, if you walked away from the first 3 rounds with one of Todd Gurley and Le'Veon Bell and then Baldwin and Mixon, I'm more than happy with that because you have a couple elite players, and you have a guy that could potentially get into that territory this year.
I think that's really good, too. I don't, you guys know I'm not that big of a fan of Mixon this year. I just think he's too risky to take in the top 25 picks. So for me, man, I think I would probably reach for Ertz. I think I would go Baldwin and Ertz at the turn, and that just kind of sucks. It would feel bad, but you know what? If nobody falls, that's what happens. You take the best players on your board, and that's who I've got. So just remember last year, Tags, you guys can all go back to this conversation. We did a podcast talking about the same thing. We said Le'Veon Bell over David Johnson at number 1. Then at the turn, Tags and I agreed. DeAndre Hopkins, Todd Gurley. If you'd started that way, you won your league. So hopefully you guys are nailing it here with Doug Baldwin and Joe Mixon so people can win their league on that. All right, let's move on to the mid-range. And, we talked about our top 5. First of all, Jim, do you agree Saquon Barkley over Antonio Brown? Or are you a little bit higher on Brown than us?
Yeah, so the only guys I would take over Brown are those top 3 running backs of mine, with Bell, Gurley, and Johnson. After I get past those guys, I am going Antonio Brown. But after Brown, I'm not touching any other wide receivers in the first round until we get past a guy like Leonard Fournette, because Fournette is the end of the second tier running back for me. And I would put those guys above the wide receivers just because I know if I pass on a running or a wide receiver there, I'm going to get a really good wide receiver in the second round still. So if Antonio Brown is there for me at pick 4, 5, or 6, I am going to take him. And David Johnson is not available, with that being the caveat. But let's say Brown is gone, the top 3 running backs are gone. That's when I would go Zeke, at least for my rankings personally, having him down there, or I'd go Alvin Kamara or Saquon Barkley. But I do want to put Brown ahead of those guys just because he's such an anomaly from a production perspective.
Tags, where do you have Alvin Kamara here? I know you've got Barkley as your number 5. Is Alvin Kamara your running back number 6?
Yeah, so I have Kamara right there after Antonio Brown. So Antonio Brown, I go back and forth with him, and I've done quite a few mocks, and for whatever reason, I keep ending up with that number 5 spot, and I've always got the decision between Antonio Brown and Saquon Barkley. I usually take Barkley, but Brown, I've tried to mix it up in my best ball leagues a little bit just so I don't have overexposure to Barkley, because I typically will get him anywhere from 5 to 7. So I'm torn on those, and it really comes down to, for me, the reason I usually go Barkley is because I know in the second round I can get, an elite wide receiver. Sometimes Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen, Devontae Adams, A.J. Green falls into that territory. So I'm good with those guys. But if you go Antonio Brown, like Jim was saying, my issue is that sometimes you might not even get Devonta Freeman back to you. And I don't even know if I want Devonta Freeman to be my RB1 with the way that we saw things trending in Atlanta last year with, Tevin Coleman getting some more touches, Devonta Freeman, it becoming more of a timeshare Coleman is a free agent after this year, so they could choose to use him up a little bit. They have Freeman for a couple more years. So it comes down to that. But I mean, at some point you have to say it's freaking Antonio Brown. Like, how do we pass on Antonio Brown for unproven talent? So for me, it's like Antonio Brown, I'm taking him definitely right there, him or Saquon at 5 and 6. Kamara is clearly after those guys because he comes with more risk than they do. And not to say that he doesn't pack major upside. He obviously does, but he's not a 20 touch per game guy. So ideally for me, I think I'd rather take a running back in the first. If you're in the middle, I'd rather take a running back, likely take the best wide receiver available in the second, someone like Thomas, Keenan Allen, Devontae, AJ Green. And from there, it's wherever the draft kind of takes you because you're not guaranteed to get Mixon, Howard, or McKinnon in the middle of the third. So it can get ugly really quick at running back. And so you kind of need to get ahead of the curve a little bit.
All right, I've got some more questions for Jim that I'm going to pick his brain on here in a minute. But first, I want to talk about the other sponsor of today's show, yourrules.com. Have you ever wished you could substitute players in fantasy football like a real-life football coach? Like in the middle of the game, if your player gets hurt, he goes on concussion protocol, he's ejected, he's just not performing, whatever it is, you can get rid of him on yourrules.com and move one of your bench guys in. It's really brilliant the way they came up with this. We've all wanted to do it, right? And, you can also do the same type of thing where you score on pass interference points. Instead of just, 50-yard touchdown he's going to catch and then they just blast him. He doesn't get the 11 points. You can get some points for that. You can take control and change your game today. Your team, your settings, your rules. Your Rules is fantasy sports your way. Change your game today. Check out yourrules.com or visit them on Facebook to learn how to play the game by your rules. That's www.yourulz.com. All right, Jim. So I wanted to ask, you said you wouldn't take any other receiver, including DeAndre Hopkins, Odell Beckham, Julio Jones, Michael Thomas, all these guys, until after Leonard Fournette. So just how far down do you have Fournette? Like, you already said you're taking Kamara, Barkley over Fournette. Do you also have Kareem Hunt? Anybody else above Fournette?
So Dalvin Cook, actually.
Me too.
Yeah.
Good call.
I feel very nervous about that because I got burned badly by drafting Deion Lewis after his ACL injury. And his was a little bit later than Dalvin Cook's was, and he had some complications. But I get very wary of players coming off of injury as a result. But I think with Dalvin Cook, the usage that he had last year prior to his injury was insane. He has a much better quarterback in Kirk Cousins than Fournette has in Blake Bortles. And I like the receiving work that Dalvin Cook got a lot last year too, and especially with Jerick McKinnon out of the picture. The upside there is huge for Cook, and again, he plays indoors, and I do factor that as being a positive for a player. So I have Zeke, Kamara, Barkley, Cook, and Fournette all in that second tier. Those are the guys I would take above Odell Beckham and Julio Jones. But then if it's Kareem Hunt or Melvin Gordon, that's when I start to waver a bit and say, maybe I should just go with the wide receiver instead and then try to swing around to the running back in the second round.
I'm with you on Hunt and Gordon being below those guys. I've actually got Devontae Freeman ahead of Hunt and Gorman as well. Tags, where do you have this group of running backs? Cook, Fournette, Freeman, Gordon, Hunt.
Yeah, my order is Kamara, Fournette, Melvin Gordon, actually. I think Melvin Gordon is someone I'm debating moving ahead of Leonard Fournette too. Kareem Hunt, then Dalvin Cook, but they're all in the same tier.
They're all close. They're all really close, except Kareem Hunt. I don't have Kareem Hunt in that second tier.
Well, recently I've actually gone through my rankings and I've set tiers, and I actually do have all 5 of those guys in the same tier. So that's like the end of the tier where I'd feel comfortable as my RB1s. Like Devonta Freeman, I really don't want as my RB1. I like Mixon, but I don't want him as my RB1. So Melvin Gordon is someone that I don't know how he's like actually falling in drafts as far as he is. I mean, if you're relying on an injury, that could be the reason, I guess. But he has finished as an RB2 or better in 24 of his last 29 games. It's obviously really good. They're getting Forrest Lamp back on the interior of the offensive line. I know they lost Lawson this year, but the thing is the defense continually gets better in LA, and I think it's going to be a team that's going to be in position to run the ball. When Hunter Henry went down, it's like, where are these targets going to go? Because the target, they're not going to give Virgil Green, 100 targets. They're not going to do it. If they bring back Antonio Gates, they're not going to give him more than 50, 60 targets. So Melvin Gordon, out of necessity, is going to be more of a receiver again, and he's always, in like the last couple of years, he's been a wide receiver for them. So Melvin Gordon belongs in this conversation, but it's really tough because when you're in that 7 to 9 area, you're almost left choosing. You're kind of like left with the scraps in the draft, because it's like whoever anybody takes in front of you, it kind of just falls into your lap as it may.
That's okay. Yeah, but yeah, I'd prefer to pick my choice.
No, I agree with you, but that's what I'm saying is like if you just go by the order of your rankings, it's kind of like just falling down. Kamara's gone. Okay, Hopkins, I'm not taking Hopkins in the first round. Fournette, Gordon are gone. It's like, okay, I have to look at Hunt and Dalvin Cook. Okay, I'll take one of them at pick 9. And
who would you take between Hunt and Dalvin Cook?
Oh, I have Hunt one spot higher, but you can make the argument for either one of them. I just think that, so Dalvin Cook's workload was massive, but the offense has changed, obviously, with Pat Shurmur leaving. And on top of that, Latavius Murray was dealing with an ankle injury or I think he had ankle surgery, actually. So he was limited the first couple weeks. So we never even saw what the timeshare was supposed to be. But again, it's a new offense, so things can change relatively quickly. Latavius Murray, I think, did earn some points with Mike Zimmer going forward, though, for the way that he played last year. So there's some ifs. Usually I'll grab a running back there in the middle towards the end, that 7 and 9 range, and then I'll grab a wide receiver on the way back, because I'm guaranteed, if Julio Jones falls, if Michael Thomas falls, Keenan Allen, those guys are like easy picks in the second round. So lock up one of those running backs.
So, okay, who's your number 2 wide receiver, and would you consider taking him in the first 8, 9 picks?
Julio Jones is my number 2. Beckham is right there. Those guys are in the same tier, Jones and Beckham, and then after that, there's the next tier. I honestly don't think so, because I'm not guaranteed to get one of those running backs that we were just talking about in the second round. So I'd rather take my chances of getting a wide receiver that drops off a little bit, like a Michael Thomas, than dropping off from, Cook or Kareem Hunt to someone like Devonta Freeman or Christian McCaffrey.
And Jim, who was your number 2 wide receiver?
Yeah, I've got Julio 2. I have the same as Tags, actually. It's Julio 2, Odell Beckham 3, and then I have Hopkins 4. I have him in the same tier as them, but I think he's definitely the fourth or the third guy in that tier for me. So I think that I would probably be okay going with Julio if Fournette is off the board and Cook and Barkley, but I don't think Cook is going to be off the board, honestly. So I probably will wind up going with Dalvin Cook in that situation, and then picking up whichever wide receiver, kind of like Tag said, is there for me in the second round.
Again, I'm a little bit different than you guys here in the mid rounds. I'm sorry, in the mid first round. I've got Saquon number 5, Antonio Brown number 6, but this is where it gets a little bit different. I've got Julio Jones number 7 overall, Odell Beckham number 8, Keenan Allen number 9, and I'm getting a ton of Keenan Allen because of that, but based on what he did to close the season, I'm not just talking like the final 4 weeks, I'm talking the final 8 weeks, he was absolutely phenomenal, and I know he's got some injury risk, no more than someone like Alvin Kamara. Running backs get hurt much more often than wide receivers, and I know Keenan Allen's more injury prone than other wide receivers. Same with Odell Beckham. Julio Jones, you might think he's injury prone, but he's not. He's no more injury prone than Antonio Brown if you look at how many games he's played. So I've got all of those guys ahead of Kamara, who I would take at number 10. I wouldn't mind so much. I know you can get another stud wide receiver in the second round, but I wouldn't mind going Julio Jones, Michael Thomas in my first 2 rounds here.
Yeah, I guess if I do that, though, the running backs I can get in the third round are really bad.
Yes, it's scary. I mean, I'd be reaching for Sony Michel there as my first running back. And I love Sony Michel, but that's scary.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd probably be Rashad Penny for me. And like Rashad Penny, a talent is very good, but there's also a lot of ambiguity there because he's a rookie going into a team that has a better, with Dwayne Brown there, but still a very poor offensive line. Mm-hmm. And that's worrisome for me. So I like both Julio Jones and Michael Thomas where they're going, but I do not think I could leave the first 2 rounds picking at this slot without having at least one running back on my team.
Now, Tags, what are you doing here? Let's move on to the, after the 21st guys. We've already mentioned Devonta Freeman, Christian McCaffrey, Jerick McKinnon, Doug Baldwin. After those guys, and Joe Mixon, after those guys, who is the next person that you want? Is it just best player available, or is it like if you get a wide receiver here, Antonio Brown, you have to go running back? How would you approach it, Tags?
Yeah, that's the area of the draft that gets ugly. Right after that Baldwin, McKinnon, Gronk territory, like that's where things get really disgusting for me. And that's because like I have Sony Michel as my number 28 overall player, but I don't want to draft him there because I don't have to. Like the thing is like you want equity built in with these players, and just because my projection is there doesn't mean that I should draft him there. So it's like then you start looking at guys like Alex Collins, T.Y. Hilton, these guys have question marks. Like Lamar Miller, I actually think that he's going to get a bigger workload than people think. I think that Deontay Foreman, we haven't talked about him on this podcast very much, but if you guys have followed my writing, I've talked about Foreman, the fact that I think that he starts the season on the PUP list, which means he's out for the first 6 weeks. With the timing that he ruptured his Achilles, it's an 11-month recovery typically, and that would put him right around week 6 or 7, and that's pushing it. So I don't think he starts. So I think Lamar Miller is like in that conversation in the 3rd round where you consider him, but you don't feel good about it. And the 3rd round is where you probably start taking your guys, the ones that you're planting your flag on, like Stephon Diggs. I know a lot of people are really high on him. Some people are high on Darius Geis, and my expert mock draft I did just last week, I think. Darius Geis went in the 3rd round. So it's like that's when people are starting to plant their flags. They're taking the guys like Tyreek Hill who come with massive risk, and it's just ugly. So I think that the first 2 rounds, maybe the beginning half of the 3rd, that shapes your draft. And that's why it's like getting behind that running back position gets really ugly really quick. So getting at least one of those top 15 guys, ideally 2, is perfect. And then you can kind of attack wide receiver, because once you get outside the top 10 receivers, I can make the case for anybody in the top 20, maybe the top 28 there to finish as a top 12 guy.
All right, Jim, same question for you. If you get one wide receiver and one running back in the 1st and 2nd round, and you're coming back into the middle of the 3rd round, do you have to get one of these running backs, or are you just taking best player available? And if so, who is it in this range?
Yeah, so if Joe Mixon's off the board, I'm probably not going to be getting a running back here, because I don't have Jordan Howard in that same tier, and he frightens me in a lot of ways. So I would not go Jordan Howard there. And the problem is I have the same issue as Tags. A lot of guys who I would have ranked highest there, I don't need to draft there, because I have Amari Cooper ranked in that range. I have Alshon Jeffrey ranked in that range, and they're both 4th round picks who I could maybe get with my next one. So yeah, I'm probably going with a wide receiver most often, but I think that's kind of the tipping point where if Gronk were to fall, or if Travis Kelce is sitting there, I would get very tempted. But I think more often than not, it would be a wide receiver I'd be going with. Just picking the top-ranked one on my list. Again, probably not being Alshon Jeffrey or Amari Cooper and hoping they swing back. But Tyreek Hill's right there, and I'm okay with him. Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs. I'm okay with those guys. I don't have them ranked as high as some other people, but I would take them there and then hope to get the other wide receiver in the next round. So for me, the 3rd and 4th rounds outside of Joe Mixon really do kind of revolve around the wide receivers.
I've got all 3 of those tight ends in my, early to mid 3rd round as well. Zach Ertz, Travis Kelce, Rob Gronkowski. But, I haven't really got any shares of those guys. And the reason why is because if I'm drafting in the middle of the 3rd round there, one of the guys that I have above him is going to be there. Either T.Y. Hilton, Stephon Diggs, or Larry Fitzgerald. And again, Larry Fitzgerald I don't have to reach for, so I don't have any shares until the 4th round, but I'm getting all the Larry Fitzgerald shares. I was saying Golden Tate a couple weeks ago, but since then it's been all Larry Fitzgerald. I mean, he's got no one to compete with for targets except for David Johnson. I think he's going to get like 10,000 targets again. He's still every bit as good, not as he's always been. Obviously, he was a monster back when, but Larry Fitzgerald's really good. So I'm getting him in the 4th round. But yeah, I'm going to get one of T.Y. Hilton, Stephon Diggs here, even if that means I don't have a running back yet. And sometimes it has meant that.
So, Jim, I'm going to direct this one at you, because like you mentioned Joe Mixon in this whole 3rd round conversation. And the reason I brought it up is because I have been seeing Mixon. So I'm a huge Mixon supporter this year. However, I'm seeing him now go at the end of the 2nd round. And I'm not really comfortable with that. Like, I feel like you're losing all the equity that you have built in, and the fact that you're supposed to get him cheaper. How do you feel about him at the end of the 2nd, where it's like, if you get to that running back position, like let's say you're the 10th pick in the 2nd round, and Mixon's there and McKinnon's there, and you don't know if they're going to last to your next pick. Would you reach for Mixon or McKinnon there at 210?
Yes, I would. Like, if I need a running back, yes. But like, if I've got David Johnson and I don't necessarily need a running back, then I'm not going to reach, because I think that I would probably have the wide receivers ranked above those guys if that were to be the case. So if I don't have a running back, McKinnon and Mixon are the end of a tier for me. And I care more about drafting at the end of a tier, getting before that fall off, than I do about which round necessarily I get them in. And for me, McKinnon and Mixon do represent the fall off. So if the draft has been running back heavy to that point, I will go with McKinnon or Mixon in the 2nd round. It does kind of stink. I'm not a huge fan of having Mixon there, but it means I should be able to get a pretty respectable wide receiver, again, most likely Doug Baldwin, in the third round. So I would wind up doing that if they are the end of the tier. I don't feel great about it, if that helps, but I would wind up doing it just because I think I kind of have to at that point to ensure I scoop up the end of that tier.
Guys, there are so many scenarios, and that's the beautiful thing about drafts, is it's like, what is going to happen? There's so much pressure going into the draft, you're worrying and everything, but what I found is when I use Draft Wizard, and I've been using Draft Wizard since well before I was with Fantasy Pros. Like, it's what brought me to the site. I absolutely love Draft Wizard. If you haven't seen it, it's our draft simulation software where you actually simulate the draft. You can simulate it against Yahoo ADP, ESPN ADP, against experts, anything that you want. There's so many customizable ways. You can do dynasty startup drafts. You can do rookie-only drafts. You can set it to your league settings. And the best way to prepare for your draft is just to practice. I've done probably 120 Draft Wizard drafts, so I know what it's like when I'm drafting from the 1 spot, from the 4 spot, from the 9 spot, from the 12 spot, and I've done like 15 drafts from each spot, so I know what to expect. I know what doesn't work out. I know what I like. And everyone listening at home, you guys can do the same thing. It takes like 5 minutes to complete a draft. Do 3 of them over lunch, and you can still eat with plenty of time, too. Then you don't have to talk to your coworker.
Or they try and talk to you while you're doing your draft.
Yeah, they will probably try to. Fortunately, we work with a bunch of people who like fantasy sports and don't want to talk about like plants and stuff. But yeah, I know how it is on the outside world, and it's better to be doing Draft Wizard, trust me. Okay, guys, so let's move on and talk about if you're picking at the end of the first round. And based on what I've said, you all know I'm ending up with a lot of Julio Jones or Odell Beckham if I'm picking 10, 11, or 12. And on the swing around, there's really not running backs there for me unless Dalvin Cook falls. I've been having a lot of drafts where I get Odell Beckham and Dalvin Cook when I'm drafting at the end, and I love that start. Just absolutely love it. Jim, where are you ending up if you're picking at 9, 10, 11, 12?
It's very similar players. Most likely Dalvin Cook because he is the cheapest of the running backs I have in that second tier of running backs. So wind up with a lot of Dalvin Cook, but then in the second round, I've actually wound up I don't know if it's just been the way that things have fallen, but I've been getting a lot of Michael Thomas, and I'm okay with that.
That's awesome start.
Yeah, absolutely. If I can get Dalvin Cook and Michael Thomas, 2 guys who play indoors, are in what I think will be very good offenses for this year and should see good workloads, I'm cool with that. If Thomas is gone, Keenan Allen's great. I'm not going to object to that at all. So I actually really like picking at the back end of the first round. Yes, it does come with extra ambiguity at running back because I definitely would prefer to have Le'Veon Bell or David Johnson over Leonard Fournette or Dalvin Cook, but I'm still going to get a really good wide receiver to pair with them.
Yeah, you are.
And I like that a lot. So if I'm not picking at the front of the draft, which is my favorite spot, I'd rather pick at the end because you're going to get 2 really good players. And the fall off, I think, once you get to the middle of the second round is where things start to get a little bit sketchy for me.
We have a bunch of people ask us every single week in the mailbag, where would you pick if you got your choice? Because sometimes you get your choice. Like if you pick, some leagues do it, you pick your home run derby winner, and if you picked Bryce Harper, well, you get your first choice. And where would you pick? I always say 2 or 1, but after that, yeah, I think I would choose 10. If I choose 10, I'm getting Dalvin Cook and Odell Beckham, and that's a killer start. I've even several times got Odell Beckham and Julio Jones in best ball drafts, and I don't feel bad about missing out on a running back because those are my number 2 and 3 wide receivers. They're monsters. They're the 2 best players in NFL history in terms of yards per game.
Yeah, if I start with those 2 guys, I'm waiting a long time before I circle back to running back because it's just going to be a punt at the position because the third round for running backs is awful, especially at the end of it. I don't like the beginning of the fourth all that much. I could go with Rashad Penny there, but yeah, if I go with 2 wide receivers there, I'm probably getting a wide receiver in the third as well because the running back outlook in the third round is just bloody.
It's ugly, but I mean, you could go back-to-back, third, fourth round, 2 rookie running backs. You could go Darius Guice, Sony Michel, Rashad Penny. You get 2 of those 3 guys. I don't think that's a bad way to go. Or maybe Mark Ingram. I don't think you would have to draft Mark Ingram that high, but I'd be fine taking him there because when he comes back, he's an RB1 like every week. Tags, how do you feel about Mark Ingram at the end of the third round, early fourth round? Is that way too high?
Yeah, it's too early for me. Like, I'm not going to end up with Mark Ingram on a lot of my teams just because I'm unwilling to do that. Like, if it gets put to the point where maybe I'm on my 5th round, that's where I'd probably start to consider him. But at the same time, there's still guys like Ronald Jones on the board around where he's being drafted, and I'd rather take Ronald Jones, who's going to play 16 games. He's not involved in a timeshare. They're pretty much going to give him as much as he can handle. So in relation to what we were talking about the end of the first round, again, this is where I'm going to take an elite wide receiver and one running back. Like, I'm going to make sure I get at least one of each, because I don't want to leave. The idea of Odell Beckham and Julio Jones sounds great and all, but the idea of starting, an Alex Collins or Derrick Henry in my RB1 slot is not appealing at all.
Well, don't pick them, man. Pick one of the rookies. I got it, yeah.
These rookies are actually behind the curve right now in ADP. They're going to move up. Like, as the preseason goes, you're going to start to learn about guys like Royce Freeman. You're going to see him move up. Sony Michel is probably going to move up. And Ronald Jones is another one. He's probably going to move up when people realize that he's the starter and that Peyton Barber's not very good. But so I don't know. For me, when you're at the 10-12 turn, it sucks, but I hate being at the turn, especially when it comes to the end of the first round, because you're not getting the elite of the elite. And if you do, you're going to get it at wide receiver. And then you're going to have to wait a full 23 picks again before you go again. So I just don't like feeling like, oh my God, like every single pick that goes, you're just hoping a running back falls to you. You're hoping. Where if you take one wide receiver and one running back, you don't feel like that panic anymore, and you can kind of go with the flow of the draft.
It's a lot easier to not panic when you've got Julio Jones and Odell Beckham on your team, though.
Well, that's the thing. So Jamie Eisenberg from CBS, he actually, in the mock draft we did, he had that turn pick, and I'm pretty sure that's the combo he went with at 1-2. And then it got to 3-4, and he took, I think it was Zach Ertz and another wide receiver. So because basically he would have been reaching on a running back. Running back started to fly off the board.
Yeah.
And then I kid you not, I think he went 7 picks in a row. He took running backs because he felt so behind at the position. He needed to stack them up to play the matchups. And it's not a great feeling to be like that. Whereas like wide receiver, I think you could find some more value late than you can running back. So it's really a slippery slope. And I understand the appeal to taking Julio Jones and Odell Beckham or Michael Thomas. But I would definitely try and get one of those running backs.
I would say though, like if I do go 2 wide receivers, I think I would take that plan of attack though and just really wait at running back until I can go later, because I think the reaches at running back in those rounds, I'm not going to force it. So I think if I were to go Odell and Julio, I probably would be in the same boat where I'm just scrambling at running back later on. I could accept it there. It's just I think that's kind of where the strategy would force me to go.
I want to see every mock draft that Jamie Eisenberg has done this year and just like study it. I'm sure that he felt really good about that draft. Like he was probably laughing at you guys because I don't think Jamie's probably ever done a bad draft. I'm going to email him and see if he can send it to me. That'd be awesome. So like, okay, if you're doing that, Jim, which running backs would you be targeting in, 5th, 6th, 7th round as your RB1s? I mean, I know the RB1 strategy. I don't think you ever go into a draft saying, I'm going to do the no RB strategy. But if you happen to do it based on what happens, who are you targeting?
Well, I would mention that I would be okay taking Rashad Penny in the 4th. I'm okay with that. I think that's the one running back where I'm okay with going that. But if I pass on him, I'm picking towards the end of the 5th round. That's the Dion Lewis range, and I'm okay with Dion Lewis. I could do that. I like his offensive line. I like his offense in general, actually, with the changes that they have made in the coaching staff. I am a huge Marcus Mariota fan, and I think that in a more 2018 offense as opposed to 2004 offense, I think that Mariota should be in store for a really good season. So Dion Lewis is probably my favorite guy if we're looking beyond that. But then it gets pretty hairy.
Tevin Coleman.
Yeah, not Tevin Coleman for me, but right. No thanks. But I'll take swings at Marlon Mack, Royce Freeman, Jamal Williams, and just kind of take hacks to the Packers, I think, would be my strategy there. Try to get whichever guy winds up being it. I don't care if it's Ty Montgomery. I don't care if it's Jamal Williams or Aaron Jones. I just want one of those guys on pretty much every roster in case they wind up being the guy. So looking at high upside guys in good offenses, again, Marlon Mack, Jamal Williams, Ty Montgomery, Aaron Jones, guys like that, those are going to be the ones that I target if I do decide to pay down at the position and really wait on it. But Dion Lewis, I think, would be the main guy in that 5th, 6th round who I do wind up taking.
I like Deion Lewis there as well, and I'm completely with you. If you miss on running backs, not miss, but pass on running backs the first 4 or 5 rounds, you go all high upside, and you go depth of high upside. You get 5, 6 guys who all have a chance to be starters. You get Jamal Williams. You get Marshawn Lynch. You go out and you get Carlos Hyde or Nick Chubb. 2 of these guys are going to hit. You're going to have 2 quality starting running backs, and you get it just for a couple mid-round picks. So I don't mind that strategy at all.
Yeah, I think that Sony Michel, too, would be on my list. I just don't think he will wind up being there.
If you're in a league with Tags and I, he's gone in the 4th round, so forget about it.
He's definitely gone.
Yeah, that's what I was saying is I don't think he'll be there, but if he were to fall, I'd be okay with it. I just think that Rashad Penny, I have him ranked above Sony Michel, so I'm more likely to wind up with Rashad Penny breaking that mold of going wide receiver than I am with Sony Michel or someone else. But Lamar Miller actually does fall pretty often too, so I would be okay with him if he were to be there at the end of the 5th round. Again, that's not the most likely scenario, though.
Those 2 running backs as your first 2 running backs, Rashad Penny and Lamar Miller, it's not bad. That's not bad at all because that means you've got 3 dynamite players ahead of him. I wouldn't mind that roster.
I have both those guys in the Scott Fish Bowl as well, so I'm hoping that it works out. I'd be very okay with that for sure.
Tags, how do you feel about this whole idea, man?
So yeah, if I missed out on the running backs, and if you want to go with that strategy and say that you're going to be like, I'm going to go wide receiver heavy, and you're not going to draft a running back till the 5th or 6th round, I think the Deion Lewis attack angle is probably what I would do as well. I am a little concerned that they said the other day that Derrick Henry's the starter, which it just tells me that it's more of a timeshare than I think I wanted to admit. I'd probably shoot for someone. I'd start looking for high floors there because you have the ceilings with your wide receivers or your tight ends, whoever you took earlier in the draft. So I'd look for floors. I think Tariq Cohen is someone that's going to provide a solid floor. I think it's going to be like a Chris Thompson type player this year. That's who I believe that Tariq Cohen is in the Bears offense. And I think that you look at Royce Freeman. He's definitely someone. But the problem, though, with expecting him to be there at the 5-6 turn is that I think once we get to draft season, he's going to be up around the beginning of the 5th round, and you're at the tail end, being at that turn. I don't think Royce Freeman's going to be there. I think that Kerryon Johnson is someone I would look at, another rookie running back. Guys, don't be afraid of drafting rookie running backs. Seriously. The only one I'm shying away from right now is Nick Chubb because it seems like the Browns are on this path where they just said we're going to take 1-year rent-a-players when it comes to Tyrod Taylor and Carlos Hyde, and we're going to teach our young guys and we're going to eventually bring them into the lineup. But I don't think that's until after Hugh Jackson is fired. So Nick Chubb's the only one that I'm avoiding who was drafted in the first 3 rounds.
So what is your first, 2nd round turn looking like in most cases? Like I said, I've been getting a lot of Odell Beckham, Dalvin Cook. Jim's been getting a lot of Dalvin Cook, Michael Thomas. What have your turns been looking like?
Julio Jones, Melvin Gordon, if they're there every single time. Fournette never makes it back to me. And I have Melvin Gordon higher than Kareem Hunt and DeAndre Hopkins. So if for whatever reason they fell, but almost, I would say 9 times out of 10, I get Julio Jones and Melvin Gordon there. And if Gordon is gone, it's usually Julio Jones and Dalvin Cook.
So if you're picking at 10 and you've got, let's say Kareem Hunt is on the board, okay? You're taking Julio Jones over Kareem Hunt? Same thing over Dalvin Cook?
That's where it depends on...
Because Jones is going to be there at 14 probably. He's been dropping into the 2nd round in most drafts.
He has been, but it's tough. I mean, yeah, I probably take the running back there just because I don't want to risk the fact that like we said, there's 10 running backs that I would say are legitimate RB1s. Like something has to happen for them not to finish as an RB1.
Yeah.
And that happens every year, obviously. But I want one of those top 10 guys, and Hunt falls in that category. So I probably would go Hunt over Julio and then hope.
Okay.
And whatever best wide receiver falls to me in the 2nd round would probably be Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, one of those 2.
See, I'm not so sure. Jim, what do you think about this? If nothing happens to Kareem Hunt, is he a lock to be an RB1? Because I'm not so sure with Spencer Ware coming back.
Yeah, I'm not. I have Hunt actually in a separate tier from Cook and Fournette. I think that's he is the top one in that tier, followed by Gordon. I might put Gordon above Hunt. It's kind of back and forth. I've changed those a couple of times so far this year. I don't feel as good about Kareem Hunt as I do about Julio Jones or Odell Beckham there. So if it were to happen where Dalvin Cook and Leonard Fournette, all those guys were off the board, then and Kareem Hunt were my top ranked running back left, then I would go with the wide receiver. And let's say it comes back to me in the 2nd round and Hunt is still available there, that's when I would pull the trigger. I'd go with him, Melvin Gordon, Devontae Freeman, one of those guys. But I think that I would go with the wide receiver over Hunt there and just kind of see what falls to me in the second round, hoping that one of those three running backs between Hunt, Gordon, or Freeman does wind up being available for me in the second round. And I would assume that Freeman at least would be there, which I'd be very okay with.
Do you guys play Settlers of Catan, the board game?
I've played it once.
Never even heard of it.
Oh, Tags, we got to play, man. We got to get together and play. Play some golf in our jorts. Play some Settlers of Catan.
Jorts? Wait, whoa. No.
Yeah, Bobby wears jorts on his free time.
Bobby.
Yeah.
Wait, you don't like jorts, Jim? You would look awesome in jorts,
I did when I was
man.
in 8th grade, I think. Yeah, they were pretty in then.
Bobby's still in 8th grade, by the way. He just has 3 kids.
Jorts, I don't think I've ever been in.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
probably fair.
Yeah. Anyway, so Tags, let's say that you have a normal first, second round. So you get your guys, you get Melvin Gordon, and you get Julio Jones. What are you looking to do at the 3-4 turn?
At the 3-4, obviously, if there's one of the top 15 running backs there, I'm going to take one of them. But most of the time, they're not. And then I feel like you're looking at the wide receivers who are available because, like, it really depends on the shape of your draft because some people aren't as high on Stephon Diggs. Some people take Tyreek Hill in the 3rd round. Some people let him stay on the board. Like, I was in a draft the other day full of analysts, and I think that Tyreek Hill fell into the start of the 5th, and that's when he went. Obviously, that's the part in the draft where I'd probably start to consider him in the 5th. But a lot of times he goes before then. So once you get outside, as we mentioned, you get outside the first couple picks in the 3rd round, things can go all over the place. Like Sony Michel sometimes doesn't fall to me in the 4th round. Like it just that happens.
Especially when we're drafting against our listeners.
That absolutely happens when we're doing against our listeners. But Sony Michel is someone that I would look to draft there because I know that I'm not going to get him on my team if I don't take him at that 3-4 turn. And that's honestly, it's decent value in terms of how I feel about him. But at that point, that's why I say this is where you have to start going with the flow of the draft, and you kind of. That's why at the first 2 picks, it's so important for me to get one running back and one wide receiver, just because I hate feeling the panic of having to reach for players. Because, Jim, as much as we talked about that strategy, as much as I know it can work if you pick the right players, I hate the 0 running back strategy. Like, I really do, like, with a passion. I don't like relying on players that need injuries or we're expecting a breakout. I want the volume. Like, give me the volume. So I just don't like having to panic waiting for that 3-4 turn, wondering if a running back's going to fall to me. So that's why I'm old school in the terms I feel like I need at least one running back who's a workhorse.
Yeah, my coworker Brandon Gadula at numberFire has done really great research into see that how bad waiver wire running backs are, and that's really turned me off to foregoing running backs. And early round running backs are awesome. So I am generally going to get at least one quality running back on my team. If I have a running back in the 1st and the 3rd round, I'll probably feel pretty good about that as long as they are within the range of guys I'd want to select there. So more often than not, I will be having at least one early round running back that I really do like. But if I do wind up going away from that again, I think Rashad Penny's probably the guy towards the end of the 3rd round, early 4th, who I would take in order to kind of make up ground there. But outside of that, it is a lot of wide receivers I'd wind up taking in the 3rd, 4th turn.
So, guys, I just realized that, I brought up Settlers of Catan, and then I didn't even make my point at all and talk about it. So in Settlers, what you do is you have to draft your property, right? And it's this whole balance of, well, if I take this, then this is going to happen. And so what do I do? And it just, I don't know, it reminded me of it. And it just made me really want to play because it's a lot like fantasy football, but in a board game, like a whole season happens in like 30 minutes. I love strategy board games. Okay, guys, that's all we have for today's show. But before I let Jim sneak out of here, I wanted to ask him, because who knows when we'll be able to talk to him next time. I want to get as much information from him as I can. Who are one or two guys, Jim, that like after these first 4 rounds, you've just been getting a ton of shares of, like you want them on all your teams?
Yeah, so not really the first 4 or 5 rounds. Not really, actually does not have an ADP right now in Fantasy Football Calculator. But Quincy Enunwa is a guy who I've been getting a ton of, because when he was with the Jets in 2016, he was superbly productive despite having a pretty poor offense, which is the baseline expectation for this year as well. But the competition for targets has not gotten much better. They do still have Robbie Anderson there, and they've tried to address the wide receiver position, but Quincy Enunwa was a physical freak coming out of college and extremely projectable. and he had production in the NFL. And that neck injury, it sounds like he's going to be okay for training camp. So I want Quincy Enunwa, who has the potential to be the top wide receiver on a team that has at least a somewhat functioning offense, potentially.
Josh McCown's not bad. Yeah, I love Quincy Enunwa. I've got him in a lot of best ball leagues.
So I think Enunwa's my main guy that I go to. I've also, and this is also pretty risky, so I wouldn't necessarily reach for this, but I've been getting a lot of Kenneth Dixon, and not sure how I feel about that.
It could be awesome. You could win all of your leagues this year.
I could lose all of them, which is also to consider. But
he's free.
Exactly. He's in the 13th round right now on Fantasy Football Calculator. But like, he was very productive during his rookie year. I know he's had an injury situation and a suspension since then, but he is going to a situation where Alex Collins did not have the trust of the coaching staff until probably the final 4 or so games last year. They still did not trust him to not fumble, and they showed that in their decision-making. Kenneth Dixon has receiving upside. Buck Allen did not do anything last year to convince me that they will not give Dixon a chance, and if he gets cut, which is possible, whatever. I cut bait. It's fine. It's not a huge deal. So Kenneth Dixon, Quincy Enunwa are the two guys I am getting pretty much every time.
By the way, some people were thinking, this is news as of yesterday, some people were thinking Dixon might, start the season injured. He's ready to go for training camp now, so I'm getting more shares of Kenneth Dixon. I've got, maybe 15, 20% in my best ball leagues. I'm probably going to bump that up to about 30 here.
I've got too much. That's what I would say. Fully aware of that. I learned from Jason Morrow that you can have too many cheap guys in best ball leagues, so even with them, I try to temper exposure for sure.
All right, guys, that's all for today's show. As always, Jim, it was a pleasure, and make sure to get yourself some jorts.
Yes, I will certainly go do that as soon as I can. Bobby and Tags, thank you both very much. I appreciate it.
It's our pleasure. Thanks again, Jim. And thanks to the sponsors of today's show, yourrules.com, where they've got some awesome customizable options, points for pass interference. You can do in-game substitutions. That's YOURULZ.com, and also pristineauction.com. They've got hundreds of lots that end daily, affordable, guaranteed authentic from the most trusted sources. pristineauction.com, PRISTINE. For Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for listening, and enjoy your football.
I just wanted you to watch me dissolve.